I'd like to call the Committee on House Administration back to order again, and the next item on the agenda is H.R. 5493, introduced by the delegate from the District of Columbia, Eleanor Holmes Norton. I'd like to thank the gentlelady for being here, thank the gentlelady for her patience, and also thank her for her hard work on this bill. This would authorize two statues representing prominent historical people in the District of Columbia to be placed in the National Statutory Hall collection at no cost to the federal government. The bill reflects the language of the relevant sections of Title II of the United States Code, which created statutory hall and governs the process by which statues in the collection are accepted or authorized for replacement by the Joint Committee on Library. The JCL may order statues to be located anywhere in the United States Capitol building, which now also includes the Capitol Visitor Centers. There are currently 100 statues in the collection. I want to assure members that this legislation has nothing whatsoever to do with the D.C. voting rights over which our committee has no jurisdiction. The District of Columbia, our nation's capital, has a unique history in our American Republic, and recognition of its distinguished citizens through sculptures to be displayed in the United States Capitol is long overdue. The Chair would now like to recognize the ranking member for any opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
We got juice. Okay. You did it.
All right, it's working now. Mr. Chairman, I support a combination of this bill and 5711, which would allow for the District of Columbia and the territories all to be able to put one statue in the Capitol. The reason I say that, and will offer an amendment to that effect, is that the states of the Union have two statues here at the Capitol, and that's the way it has always been. There is a distinction between the states of the Union, the territories, the District of Columbia. And one of the concerns I have is, despite what the chairman has suggested, that there are those who are attempting to circumvent the Constitution, in my judgment, that is to give the District of Columbia quasi-state status without going through the amendment process of the Constitution, which is the way it is set out. If you look at some official websites, you'll see even piece of legislations with reference to the District of Columbia are couched as simply an example that the House is moving ever closer to passing the D.C. Voting Rights Act. There are those who describe any legislative action in terms of showing that D.C. is treated similarly to states, or alternatively, that D.C. is treated differently, that is, in a priority status over other territories. And I just believe that is contrary to the Constitution. And while this bill does not speak to that question, it, in my judgment, tries to show that there is an equality between the District of Columbia and the other states. That's why I had argued for some time when this issue was being brought up and told my staff that I would strongly support allowing the District of Columbia and the territories, American Samoa, Guam, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands, each to have a statue here in the Capitol. And I will just say that I don't object to giving the District of Columbia and the territories the opportunity to display a statue, but I do object to using this process as some suggestion that the District of Columbia be given a vote in the United States House of Representatives, because the Constitution clearly says that the House of Representatives shall be made up of representatives from the states. And we've had this argument before, and I think it's an important argument. I find it difficult when there are those in the Congress and on the courts who have no difficulty finding things in the Constitution that are not there, and yet when the Constitution is fairly clear, well, specifically clear, as to what the makeup of the House of Representatives ought to be, we somehow say that, well, it's like that, it's similar to, it looks like it, therefore it ought to be done. We have dealt with this issue when I was in Congress the first time around. I'm one of those who supports the idea of retrocession, that is allowing the vast bulk of the District of Columbia to be returned to the state of Maryland, where people will be able to vote for both the senators and a member of the House, much as that part of the District of Columbia, which was returned to Virginia over 100 years ago, has allowed them to participate fully. But I just think that we ought to combine the two bills, and I will offer an amendment for that purpose. And with that, I would yield back the balance of my time.
I thank the gentleman. Any other debate? And now I would like to recognize open the floor for any amendments. Are there any amendments?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Oh, excuse me, Chair needs now lay upon the committee, lay before the committee, Bill H.R. 5493, and without objection, the bill will be considered and read as open to any amendments at any time. Now are there any amendments?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk.
Recognize the gentleman and agree that the amendment considered as read, and the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, the amendment is straightforward. I tried to mention it in my opening comments so that we wouldn't take a lot of debate on it unnecessarily. I hope it would be adopted by the committee. It essentially combines the D.C. statute bill and the bill granting a statute to each of the territories, giving both D.C. and the territories one statute. This change removes any hesitation members might feel voting for a piece of legislation that they would view as an unintended support for D.C. voting rights bill. I hope my colleagues would support the amendment, and I would yield back the balance of my time.
Thank the gentleman. Any other debate on the amendment? I would just like to add a few things that I respectfully disagree with the member's amendment. There are significant differences between the District of Columbia and other territories seeking statutes. The 23rd Amendment to the Constitution grants the District of Columbia 3 electoral votes. The territories of the United States have no electoral votes. D.C. residents, unlike the residents of the United States of U.S. territories, all have the obligation of United States citizenship. And another difference between D.C. residents and the residents of the territories is that D.C. residents are treated the same as the residents of the other 50 states for tax purposes. In contrast, the United States generally does not apply its taxes to the territories. And additionally, Congress treats D.C. as a state for purposes of federal funding and programs. So I respectfully ask the members to vote no on this amendment. The question now is on the amendment. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. No. In the opinion of the chairs, the noes have it, and the amendment is not agreed to. If there are no further amendments, I move that House H.R. 5493 be reported favorably to the House. The question is on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed?
No.
In the opinion of the chair, the ayes have it, and the bill is ordered reported favorably to the House. The next item on the agenda is H.R. 5711, for which provides for one statue each to be placed in the National Statutory Hall collection, honoring the citizens of American territories of Puerto Rico, American Samoa, the Virgin Islands, Guam, and the Northern Mariana Islands. This bill, like the previous one, reflects the language of the relevant section of Title II of the United States Code, which creates statutory hall and governs the process by which statues in the collection are accepted or authorized for replacement by the Joint Committee on Library. The history of these 5 American territories is rich and oftentimes overlooked. By authorizing replacement of a statue in the National Statutory Hall collection, each territory can now honor a native son or daughter while providing an educational display to those not familiar with their histories. And I would now like to recognize again the ranking member for an opening statement.
I thank the gentleman for recognizing me. It was my hope that we could combine this legislation with the D.C. statute bill and create some uniformity among like entities. I understand the gentleman suggesting there is some difference among the territories and the District of Columbia. I would just point out there is a difference among the territories themselves other than the District of Columbia. For instance, it may be a little known fact that in American Samoa, if you're born in American Samoa, you are an American national, not an American citizen, unless you are born of American citizens. If you're born on a territory of the United States called Swift Island, the same thing occurs. If you were born on Guam, you're an American citizen. If you're born in Puerto Rico, you're an American citizen. If you're born in Virgin Islands, you're an American citizen. So we've made a distinction among those. Historically, we might go back and take a look at what that is. So again, I would have hoped that we would have combined this legislation with the prior legislation for the reasons that I have indicated. But with that, I would yield back the balance of my time.
Thank the gentleman. The chair now lays before the committee H.R. 5711, and without objection, the bill will be considered and read and open to amendment at any point. Is there any debate? Are there any amendments? No amendments. I move to order H.R. 5711 reported favorably to the House. The question is on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? No.
No.
According to the chair's opinion, the ayes have it, and the bill is ordered reported favorably to the House. All members will have 2 additional days provided by the House rules to file views. Without objection, the staff will be authorized to make such technical and conforming changes as may be required to reflect the actions of the committee. The committee now stands adjourned. Thank you all.